There's me. Hi, everyone. I'm Craig Brissett. And I need to move this, so I'm looking right at it. I have three screens here. Welcome to our Europe 2022 meeting. So my plan for this evening is just to take you guys through a normal presentation I would do any typical year, but I'd be doing it in my classroom with a whole bunch of you and your kids in the classroom with me. But thanks for joining me in this Zoom meeting, the first one I've ever hosted. If you, during the presentation, if you have questions that come up, if it's a natural break and you want to just unmute and ask me a question, that's fine. If I'm talking and you're like, well, I want to ask him about that, but he keeps going, because I don't want to make this long and drawn out, put it in the chat, and then we'll come back to it. So then we have a record of it and I can address those questions. Okay, so everybody's good. We're all ready to get going here. And James, nod. Okay, thanks, man. Okay.
There you go.
Yes. All right. I'm an expert. Yeah, Europe 2022, the Grand Tour. This is part of what was, up until 2020, an unbroken series of educational tours that I've been running, and Mr. Johnson's been on almost all of them with me since 2005. And in our school, the history of them goes all the way back to 2000, the first year that my former colleague Ray Sawatsky ran a trip with grade 9s. And that was back when our school was a grade 7, 8, and 9 middle school. And that's why it became a grade 9 trip. And it just made sense going forward. And that's some of the stuff I'll talk about as we go forward. So now hopefully that's going to work. Or do I have to press here? Go here. So of course, every field trip, and that's what this is, it's a long field trip, it has educational rationale. The purpose of the trip is to provide students with an opportunity for active, engaging, exciting learning opportunities, provide them with a greater depth of understanding of the curriculum taught in the BC Social Studies program, broaden students' horizons by exposing them to different cultures, and foster a sense of community and teamwork between the participants on the trip. And some of my favorite travel quotes. Mark Twain was a famous grand tourist in Europe back in the 1800s. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And isn't that why we teach social studies anyway? 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bowline, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. And the last one, from one of the classic grand tourists, Samuel Johnson, an English nobleman who went on a huge months-long tour of the continent. The use of traveling is to regulate imagination by reality, and instead of thinking how things may be, to see them as they actually are. So I'm going to give you guys the itinerary. Of course, your kids, or if you're coming as a chaperone, your seat on the flight will look just like that. On Wednesday, March 9th, we'll be flying to Europe. Typically, the flights leave around 2 p.m. or so. So we miss that school day, and we head down to the airport. And it's an overnight flight. So we arrive, Europe's 9 hours ahead of us. So when we arrive on Thursday, it's the morning. And we'll be arriving in Frankfurt. It's a direct flight. And then we'll be taking our private coach. So we have a private bus that we've been working with this company for years, and the driver for years as well, Bart, will take us up to Cologne. We're going to visit the famous Cologne Cathedral, one of the largest churches in the world. And we'll actually climb up, get lots of stair walking on these trips. We'll climb up the tower on the left there that you see. not to the very top, but pretty close, and visit that important cathedral. And then on the same day, we'll go up the Rhine River, and we're going to visit a little tiny, Cologne's a big, huge city, so is Frankfurt. We're going to go to this little tiny village on the Rhine River called Bacharach, and it has history going back to the Middle Ages. And the building that you're seeing in the picture is where we are staying on our first night in Europe. That is actually Burgstallach. It's a 12th century castle that's been converted into a beautiful youth hostel. And so we'll be staying there, and I'll be guiding a tour around the town from the Rhine River all the way back up. It's not a huge walk, but up to the castle, and see some of the sites in this medieval village. The next day, we're going to head down to one of the most well-preserved medieval sites in all of Europe, Rothenburg ob der Tauber, which is a walled medieval city. The reason it's so well preserved is because the trade routes changed in the Middle Ages, in the late Middle Ages, and it kind of became a ghost town. And so nobody knocked down the old buildings and rebuilt in the new style. So you have this big, it used to have 6,000 people living within the walls. And it does again today, but you have this big kind of untouched medieval city. And also in Germany, it's rare that a city or town hasn't been completely rebuilt, because in the Second World War, most of the cities and towns were bombed very heavily. And Rothenburg was one that's pretty much legitimately medieval, with a few places they had to rebuild after the war. So we'll spend some time there. We'll do a really fun scavenger hunt in the town, visit the Criminal Museum of Medieval Justice. And that's something in Q4 anyway. Right now I've been teaching the students about just recently. Very unusual sense of justice they had in the Middle Ages. And at night, we'll go on a tour with the famous night watchman of Rothenburg. George has been doing this tour for 35 years or something. He's kind of famous through Rick Steves. If you're aware of that, Rick Steves, the American travel guru, but his tours are educational and hilarious, and a little bit creepy. And so that's Rothenburg at night there. And so we'll take a tour after dinner around the medieval town. The next day, we'll head to Nuremberg, also in Bavaria, in the southern part of Germany. And in Nuremberg, we'll visit the old town. And what's my next slide? Well, actually, before we depart Nuremberg, we're going to visit a really interesting, fairly modern museum called the Nazi Documentation Center. And it's built in the unfinished Nazi Congress Hall. Nuremberg was the site of all the Nuremberg rallies. You may have seen videos of that. Triumph of the Will was a film made, it was Nazi propaganda, but it was this amazing cinematography showing massive crowds of all these people coming to support Adolf Hitler and in his rise to power. And so it's a pretty somber visit when we visit there. And then on the same day, we get hit again with another somber visit. We visit Dachau, Germany, and specifically the memorial to the concentration camp, which was the first and longest lasting of the Nazi concentration camps. And we'll explore that with the age of the students in mind, but we don't. I definitely don't sugarcoat or skip over anything. But it's the visit there is very sad and very solemn, but also very important. And then that evening we'll be in Munich, Germany, and we'll kind of switch over to some positive stuff and enjoy, modern Bavarian culture and food. And we'll visit the world famous Hofbrauhaus, which is a giant beer hall, but it's open to young and old alike. And certainly we'll be up in the top floor, not down on the bottom floor where all the rowdies are, but we'll be up on the top floor with a little bit more refined, the massive dining hall up there. And they have live Bavarian entertainment, which is well, it's very unique. Next day, we're going to spend the day in Munich. We're going to visit the residence. It's this beautiful palace of the Bavarian royalty that ruled what was its own country, its own kingdom for more than 600 years. And so they've built up all these palaces there, and that's one of them, the residence right in town. And we might even get to go out to the BMW museum. I haven't taken students there. I've had lots of adults, because I do adult tours in the summer, go out to the BMW museum, and it's interesting, but that'll probably be an option. We'll probably have like a couple different options that day, and people who want to go out and check out the cars can go with our resident gearhead, Mr. Johnson. Yeah, and I might take him to a fancy palace. Anyway. And the next day, we're going to head down across the border into Austria. So we're crossing our first border, but in the EU, when you drive across a border, it just says welcome. You don't have to stop or show your passports or anything like that. So we'll visit Salzburg, famously called Rome of the North because of all the Baroque architecture. The birthplace of Mozart is there. We'll see the church where Mozart played organ when he was a teenager, like your kid's age. And we'll go up to the Hohensalzburg, which is the big fortress up on the cliff there, and get some fantastic views of the Alps surrounding us, and of course down onto the city, and learn about some of the history of this little but very what once was an extremely wealthy trading town from the Middle Ages and beyond. And then, so I'm double checking. Yeah, right. So we are staying in Salzburg that night. And then we're heading across the border to visit our friend Robert Wilfen in Slovenia, a country maybe some of you have never even considered going to, but it's a gorgeous country. It's a little tiny thing. You can drive across it in just a few hours. And we'll be up in the north, right on the edge of the Julian Alps, and we'll actually visit the only island in the entire country, and that's the thing you see in the center of the picture there. And we'll visit the Baroque Church of St. Mary on the island. We'll take these Pletna boats that were commissioned by the Austrian Empress 250 years ago, and they still have the same tradition there of taking tourists or pilgrims out to that church on the island. And and also you can see in the background there's a little bit of light up on a cliff, and that is the castle, the Blood Castle. We'll also visit the castle, get to see a working Gutenberg era printing press, and maybe meet a kind of interesting monk who brews or makes wine up there in the castle. It's an interesting place to visit, and we'll be staying right down near the lake that evening. Probably won't want to take a dip in the lake, but that'll be probably the only place on the trip where there will be a swimming pool for the kids to go swimming in. That's pretty rare in Europe, but at the places we stay anyway. Oh, a gift from Zoom. Thank you. Okay, so next. When we leave Bled, we'll head down to the western part of the country near the border with Italy, and we're going to visit these amazing caves. The Skokjan caves. It's a walk-through experience. You go with a guide. You can't just go in there on your own, and you go from little, not claustrophobically little, but small caverns with all these amazing stalactites and stalagmites to this massive open cavern with a huge raging river 150 meters below us. We walk over on a very safe, very modern bridge, but you can see the old stairs and things, the way that the tourists used to go in there 100 years ago. Very sketchy. And then we get to one of my favorite places in the world that evening. We'll be making our way into Venice. Venice is the most unique city in the world. There's no cars, there's no bicycles. It's all you either are walking or you're in a boat. and we're going to be spending actually 3 nights in Venice. So our first, by the time we get there that first night, it's basically dinner time. Well, actually, we usually do a night walk that night too, out to Santa Maria della Salute, which is the big dome building you see in the down the canal there. And then, as I said, we spend a couple days there. The first day, I do a fully guided tour of several places, including the Doge's Palace. Actually, we have local guides inside the palace, take us around the Doge's Palace. We go into St. Mark's Basilica. You will get out and ride on a gondola. And just enjoy all the typical Venetian experiences. But because we're spending an extra day, we get to really explore the next day and head out into the lagoon. So Venice is a series of many hundreds of islands. And so Venice proper is about 120 islands, but they're all linked by bridges. So you can just walk from place to place. But then further out in the lagoon, there's all these amazing places like Murano and Burano and Torcello. And we're going to get Vaporetto passes. That's the water bus that you see in the center there on the water, and head out to some of these outer islands and get the slightly less touristy but equally amazing Venice experience. That on the left is the famous glass-blowing island of Murano, and that's their town square with that huge glass sculpture beneath the medieval clock tower. And then the one on the right, that's Murano on the left, and then Burano, which is a kind of a pastel fishing village with its own leaning tower on the right. And then the next day, we're going to head across the northern part of Italy, and we'll take a stop in one of the kind of underrated, not visited by so many tourist towns that I really love, Parma. And that church in front of the Lady, the baptistry, the church, and the bell tower, very, very old Romanesque architecture from the very early Middle Ages. But then when you go inside, the whole thing is painted this gorgeous Renaissance Baroque painting. And so we'll get this kind of full experience of how the history played out in just one of the many towns. Parma, of course, is also famous for Parma ham and Parmesan cheese. And so we won't be getting the little craft shakers. We'll try out some of the real stuff straight from the source. And then, oh boy, I miss this place, the Cinque Terre. So that night we'll be in a town, that's the town right there in front of you, Levanto. And that's just actually north of the Cinque Terre. Cinque Terre means 5 villages, and the 5 towns are just one train stop or one hiking trail south of us. And that's what we're going to be doing there. We're also going to be eating an enormous amount of Ligurian food. Italy has all sorts of different styles and regional foods. There's not just one Italian food and or food style. So we'll be having amazing meals at our friend Roberto's Ristorante Moresco in Levanto, both on Saturday and then Sunday after we come back from our big hike. And that's one of the towns there, that's Vernazza, that we'll be visiting, depending on how far you want to hike. And anyway, we've got this all figured out. We've been doing this for years, but that's one of the towns. There's also Monterosso. There's 5 different towns, and then Levanto. So where we are staying is actually, you can see that the big rock outcropping behind the castle in the background. Well, Levanto's on the other side of that rock outcropping, and the distances aren't that huge, but it's a nice hike. And we'll be eating lots of gelato, of course, to satiate our thirst and hunger after a big hike. And then, of course, again that evening, feasting at Ristorante Moresco. Oh, and there's just another one of the villages along the Cinque Terre. It's a very beautiful region. Oh yeah, gelato. That's my son Jude on the trip when he was in grade 8. He went when he was in grade 8. And oh yeah, you get to take a dip in the Mediterranean. I forgot I had all these slides for it. In Levanto, it's often warm enough for the kids and the crazy adults to go dip their feet into the Mediterranean, even in March. The locals are all wearing their toques and fur coats and shaking their heads at the crazy Canadians, though, when we do that. And then after we leave Levanto, we're going to make a pit stop in Pisa, famous for its leaning tower. But you can see there's a lot more to it than just the tower. There's the huge cathedral and the baptistry. And so we'll spend some time there. They call that the Field of Miracles, because those buildings haven't collapsed yet. And they've actually done a lot of engineering work to make sure they don't in the near future anyway. And one thing a lot of tourists don't do when they visit there is go up the Leaning Tower, and we will be doing that. So it's a very complex reservation system to get in there, but we know how to do it, and we'll be taking you guys up to almost the top of the Leaning Tower. It's quite an amusing walk, throws you off balance a little bit. And we'll have lunch in Pisa, and then we'll head into Florence, which probably won't have snow on March 21st. And it's pretty rare that they'd have snow even in January in Florence. It's a pretty warm area, but I just love that picture because there was a bit of dusting of snow. The kids have learned, or will be if they're in Q4 social studies with me, quite a bit about that dome, and seen a film about the building of that dome. And that dome is very symbolic of the Renaissance, as is the entire city of Florence. And so we're going to spend a couple days in Florence. Of course, we will go in. That is a replica, but which is out in the Piazza della Signoria, one of the big squares in Florence. But the actual David, we will go in. We'll get reservations and go in and see that in the Accademia Museum. And we'll just spend some time. That's the Uffizi gallery, and then at the end, that's the Palazzo Vecchio. There's just an enormous amount of sights to see. We can't see everything, but we'll definitely be visiting some of the highlights in our day and a half in Florence. And then we're gonna head south, a couple hours drive in our coach, and visit Rome, the eternal city, they call it. It's Rome was the first city to have a population of over 1 million people way back to 2,000 years ago. That kind of collapsed after the collapse of the empire, and there weren't big cities like that for quite a long time in Europe, up until the modern era. But Rome was this just amazing ancient history. We'll be visiting the Colosseum, the Forum, Palatine Hill, and the Pantheon, of course, which is right here. That's the most intact building from the ancient world. It was a temple built for Pan, all Theon, the gods. And when the Roman Empire converted to Christianity, instead of knocking it down like they did with so many of their other temples, they kept it. And they just took down the statues and put in a cross and said, this is a church now. And that's been an active Christian church for 1,700 years, if you can believe it. People go to services there Sunday, neighborhood people go there, people get married in there. But this was built almost 2,000 years ago, and has withstood the test of time. And then we're going to visit Baroque Rome. The next day, our full day in Rome, we're going to go into, that's the staircase designed by Michelangelo in the Vatican Museum. So we're going to visit the Vatican Museum, do a guided tour of the Vatican Museum, including the famous Sistine Chapel. Again, the students have learned about that, or will be learning about that if they're in Q4 right now. And at the end, we'll come out to the biggest church in Christendom, St. Peter's Basilica. And of course, the Vatican is its own country, the smallest country in the world, 1 square kilometer. And we will see the architectural and artistic wonders of that that building and that dome. Michelangelo was very prolific. He painted the ceiling of the the Sistine Chapel and the back wall, and he designed that dome that you see that sits atop the St. Peter's Basilica, which is enormous. If you can see the letters on top of the pillars on the facade of the church, those letters are each, I think they're 10 feet high. Those just the letters. So it's a very large building. And we'll check out some of the other sites in Rome, such as the Spanish Steps and the Trevi Fountain, which is what we're looking at right there. And famously, if you toss a coin into the fountain, it will guarantee a trip back to Rome. It worked for me. And then, so that's Thursday, March 24th. Friday, you're back to your goat farm in Langley. So it's weird not hearing all the laughs. Maybe nobody's laughing though. So I'm going to go over a couple things. Let's see. Yeah, I'm still full screen. I'm actually just going to finish the presentation, then I'll look if there's any questions there, or just open it up and let you guys ask me. So the budget for the trip. From what I've seen, prices have not skyrocketed. That was one of the fears people had post-COVID. Prices are pretty much the same. So we're looking at a cost of about $42.90. My trips are all inclusive. That's your kids could go with no money and they won't starve, and they won't miss out on anything, because all the activities, all the meals, anything that we're doing is paid for. This also includes travel and medical insurance. It's all part of the package. So it's $42.90, and that's an estimate, because in the end, things change. The dollar goes up, the dollar goes down, and since the trip has to be done just at cost, we have to make sure we don't know for sure until it's usually the last three or 4 weeks before the trip where I can publish, okay, here's your final amount owing. We're not going to be asking you guys for any money, by the way, until this trip has complete approval. And so the same would be for fundraising. We can't start any fundraising until the district has approved the trip, because then if you fundraise and then there's no trip, how do you get the money back and to the people who donated it, et cetera? So not going to happen until we have full approval. Students should, so there are some criteria for being on the trip. The trip right now is open to kids that will be in grade 9 in 2022. But just handing in an application is not a guarantee that you'll be on the trip. So we review this with other teachers, mostly with admin. Students should have already demonstrated an interest in history and culture. I have a pretty good insight into that since I teach history. Have already demonstrated they're respectful and trustworthy, and be able to miss up to 3 days of school and do the required work to stay ahead, catch up. And again, at this time, we're only taking statements of interest, and I put the online application in the email and on that document. Those links should be live, and I think some people have already filled them out. So it's just, you're just saying, I'm interested. That doesn't mean that if the trip goes forward, say in September, they say, yeah, you can go forward with it, that you're on the hook for anything. If you say, yeah, actually at this time we have to withdraw, that's fine. We're not going to be saying, no, you have to pay us something. But once we get approval, I'm just going to say once, not if. So once we get approval, then we will publish a payment schedule, and we'll be asking for a $400 deposit to hold your spot. And the payments are always made through School Cash Online. It's a pretty simple way to do it and keep track of it. Okay, so last year I did a video of this, and so I just put some frequently asked questions. And so how does rooming work? Parent chaperones room with same gender parent chaperones. Students always stay with at least one other same gender student, often in rooms with multiple beds. All rooming arrangements are made prior to the trip with input from students and parents. So the kids kind of choose small groups or partners that they're kind of want to be with through the trip, and we do our best to make sure that they're rooming with those kids throughout the trip. But yeah, kids never are in a single room. They're never on their own. Parents once in a while if you're lucky. How much money? So as stated, students don't need any money except for discretionary spending. Every place we're going on this trip is the Eurozone. So there are sometimes we do trips to where we include Hungary or Czech Republic or something. They have different currencies, but everything here is the Eurozone. So 100, 200 euros, that's lots of spending money for souvenirs and snacks. Kids can also bring a Canadian bank card and withdraw money if they want to. And every student's responsible for their own passport and money. The teachers don't take care of that. If you're a parent chaperone with your own kid, I don't care if you hold your kid's passport and money, that's fine with me. But they do have to take them with them when we go out. There are some places where they actually ask to see the students' passports to see if they're the age that we said they are, because we'll get a student rate for something. And so the kids all have to wear an under the clothing money belt. And I'll show you guys a picture of that if you're not familiar. It's a $10 purchase at Walmart or a travel store, and any lots of like Mountain Equipment Co-op. And it's just a really safe way of making sure, because the main crime that tourists face is pickpocketing. Like that's pretty much it in Europe. And there's lots of people out in the touristy areas who are looking for people who aren't wearing money belts and just have stuff sticking out their back pocket, and they'll take it. What kind of food do we eat? I don't know if you guys know, I run a travel company in the summer. Well, I did before COVID, and hoping to start again, but it's called Eat and Drink Like a European. So I carry that over into my student trips. We aren't going to McDonald's. We're going to be having high quality local regional cuisine in every country we visit. And I do expect the students to be adventurous. I'm not going to make anybody eat tentacles or whatever, but we're going to have really great regional local food, and really, really picky eaters are probably not good for this trip, because we're going to try lots of different types of food. We also can take care of gluten, vegetarian. I myself I'm pescatarian. I eat fish but I don't eat meat, and it's easy. It's not a problem at all. I eat lots of great food every time I go to Europe. So anyway, we can easily take care of those things, but we definitely need to know ahead of time. You don't show up at the airport and say, oh, I can't have lactose and I can't have gluten and I'm a vegan or something. We've already planned a lot of the meals by that time. Students don't get free time. That's not a thing on these trips. We don't arrive in a city and say, all right, guys, meet back here in 3 hours. No. And this is why we have parent chaperones as well. So we have small group time where it's not just me leading you on walking tours for 12 hours a day. That's not possible. So in a lot of places we get to break up into our small groups, and those are already set before we leave, based on student requests. And we give you some parameters, and if you're going for lunch, we give you money. So we have the money for the lunches, and we say, here's your budget, and find something to eat. And we have recommendations every place we go. We've visited all these places many, many, many times. And as a parent, you're always with your own child's group, whether you want to be or not. Final words from if you're interested. Okay, so anyway, the link on there, if you're interested, definitely sign up. And I think that's my last slide, so I'll go off of share screen. Let's see, end show. And now you are sharing. Stop share. And now I'll move this back over here so I'm looking at it. Okay, so okay, let's see. Let me go up here. And I'm just going to go through these and then I'll open it up if anyone wants to chime in with their voice. Are you on mute? Uh-oh. Okay, we figured it out. Are all parents attending the field trip? Are we all chaperones? No. If you want to be a chaperone, you can put your statement of interest there. But no, we do take a lot of chaperones, but a lot of the kids' parents just send them without them going, and so that's your personal decision. But if you are interested in chaperoning, definitely fill out that statement of interest for chaperones. What if there is a couple coming as chaperone? We've had that before. It's not common, and it depends on how many people are interested. And also for next year, I really don't know. I mean, we were pushing it with the last time we were going to go, and it got canceled on us. We had over 70 people coming on that tour, and Mr. Johnson and I had figured it out. It was going to work just perfectly. We're going to split into groups, and I wasn't going to do a walking tour with 72 people. I was going to repeat it while one group did one thing. Anyway, we had it all figured out, but I don't know going forward how big the groups are going to be or can be, because all of that's unclear right now. So I would consider couples, absolutely. And we have taken them before, but typically though, if there's like a huge amount of parents that want to go, we're going to have to say, well, we can't fit all of you. So, you pick mom or dad. Only the ones who sign up and pay full price for the trip. I like tentacles. That's great. Snails, Arnaud, of course, lots of snails. Mussels too, Arnaud. I know you like those, you Belgians. Oh my gosh, lots of jokes. Okay, that's good. I like jokes. Garlic butter. Okay. No, everyone has to have a passport. Now, if you are not a Canadian citizen, you will have to check, and I can help you with that. But if you're a citizen of another country and don't have Canadian citizenship or a Canadian passport, let me say that, you may need to get a visa. And we've definitely had to do that with some international students, where they've had to get a visa issued by the Italian consulate. The last time I had to do that was for the 2019 trip, and I had to go downtown with the student and help him out with that. And that was fine. I totally didn't mind because he was gung-ho to go. But yeah, sometimes there might be a bit more paperwork. But if you're a Canadian or American passport, you don't need a special visa. We've taken grandparents before as well. That's not an issue. One of the things with the whole trip, and I don't want to sound ageist, but it's very active. And so I know, well, Mr. Johnson, look at him. He's a grandparent and he's allowed to come. So anyway, it's very active, lots of walking and lots of stairs. And we do some hiking days, as you know. So yeah, you do have to consider that. Will there be an opportunity to go a year later? You mean if, this is Carrie, I'm assuming you mean if we couldn't go in 2022. I don't know. All of that kind of stuff is up in the air. But because things are changing in a positive way right now in regards to travel, and I'm in contact with lots of people, I should be doing a bunch of tours this summer. And I've just recently told my clients, you know what, it's still too uncertain. So let's put it off another year. But I'm thinking by next year, it's going to be open up for it. And even this summer, maybe. But so anyway, that's uncertain. I don't know. We've had now 2 years of kids who have missed the trip. And some of them have asked me, and some of you are parents of those kids I know that are on here, have asked me if they could come on this trip, or would there be another trip for them at the start of the summer or something next year. And I don't know yet. So all those things will definitely I haven't forgotten about those kids. Those are still in the forefront of my mind as well. Credits. available. You, Justin, do you mean credits from some of the places? But you might recall, what I did is I pulled back as much money as I could get and refunded you guys as much money as I could get. And so we're not left with any credits in Europe because I got back whatever they would give me. So I think that's your question. If not, you can type it in. Okay, thanks. And if we don't go to 22, yeah, exactly. Another chance to go. I hope so. But I hope we can go in 2022. And to meet the criteria, it's basically, observation from the teachers and admin. So for example, what typically would happen is I get a huge list of applications or a huge pile of applications. And then I would go sit down with the administration and Mr. Johnson, and we'd look over the list, and they would, if there was anything like that maybe I didn't know about, that this kid's been getting into all sorts of trouble, but not in my classroom or something, then they would bring that up as a concern. In the end, it is the school administration who decides whether or not a student can go on a trip, and for that matter, a parent can go on a trip. So that it's not my choice, my decision in the end. It has to go up to administration for any sort of overnight field trips. They always have to look over the list and make sure there's not any red flags. My connection cut out. Oh, parent chaperone questions. Mackenzie. Oh, we'll just say them again. Is it only grade 9 that goes? So what we've done typically every year, we do a grade 9 trip in spring break. And then every second year, we do a senior trip for grade 11s and 12s that goes to different places. It's not this same tour. So we go to the UK or the British Isles, but I'm not, yeah, again, I don't know the future of that. But right now, it's still designed for students who are actively learning their European history from grade 8 into grade 9, which is almost all European heritage history. Are the amount of parents on the trip unlimited? No, it's not unlimited because everything is limited by, right now, as far as it has been in the past, by the size of the bus. And so we take students over parents, of course, and then, once we've accepted every student who meets the criteria, then we look at the parent chaperones. And to be honest, typically we almost every year have been able to take everyone who's been interested in the trip. So we don't limit, we don't say, well, we can only have 5 parent chaperones. No, we've had more than 20 on previous trips, parents, and then 40, 45 kids. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I hope I hope you were interested in what I said, and it's just weird not having any feedback except for the little chat there and James's smiling face. No. Thank you. So I really hope this does go forward. This is a passion of mine as a teacher, and adventure awaits. Yes. And I really feel it has immense benefit to the students in ways you wouldn't even realize until, as they get older and you start to realize, oh, wow, that trip really had an effect on them. So I'm going to sign off unless there's anything else. And if you're interested, just get on there and sign up, and email me if you have any specific questions. So nice to see ya. Hopefully we can see each other in person sometime soon. Okay. Bye.